Hello there. Right now it is 6:55 p.m. on Saturday, December 17th, and you're listening to Manolo Delgado. I'm a 21-year-old who moved to Milwaukee last August, and already I'm learning a few things about the city that I didn't know before. Like you, I came here to attend college at the University of Milwaukee. Milwaukee is by no means huge, but this is my first time living in a big city setting with close to 600,000 residents, compared to 270,000 where I moved from, which was Madison, Wisconsin. Something really caught my eye when I moved here. There seemed to be some parts of the town that appeared really run down, with potholes in the streets, graffiti, dilapidated buildings, and high fences. Well, at a certain point, things started to look more developed. Gone were the potholes, the fences, and boarded up buildings, and in their place were freshly manicured lawns, clean streets, and larger, well-maintained houses. It almost seemed as if these areas had more bustling life in them. The reasons for this were later made clear to me as I was driving from Wauwatosa to Lakeshore on 61st and 59th Street on North Avenue with a friend of my mom's who happens to be a social worker. She talked to me about how these differences demonstrated a clear economic divide and city development bias. 60th Street acts as the border between Wauwatosa and Milwaukee, and the river demarcates the border between neighborhoods of poverty and the better off east side where the university is. In terms of bias from the city, she briefly filled me in on early Milwaukee history. In 1983, about 2 decades before you and I were born, there was a severe economic recession in Milwaukee. In an effort to pick itself up and dust itself off, the city focused development on hotels and white-collar jobs, actually using factory buildings for these jobs. You know the type of jobs, one-person cubicle and computer-type jobs. And this wasn't all. Milwaukee focused on its factories by either updating the machinery or shutting them down. After the mass firing of hundreds of employees, white workers were largely left to return to their neighborhoods, which were for the most part receiving more attention and aid in development, while black people were left to languish in their neighborhoods with faltering economies and very little assistance to put them on firmer economic ground. The drug trade and incarceration rates doubled from this event, leaving long-standing effects of redlining and concentrated poverty worse than before, which continues even today. Believe it or not, 20 years of neglect can cause a lot of damage. I think of this as a domino effect. Picture the first domino being a black person who was fired from a factory. His domino will fall upon his children and their children's children, each with less and less to give to the community and to the next generation. In the span of 20 years, there were often more mouths to feed, but no more economic resources to do that, which seems hard and unfair. These bad effects weren't limited only to jobs. It's 2022 now, and we all use some form of technology in our daily work and personal lives. Gen Z is all grown up now, and we have created a new society through the internet, a society that can be hard to thrive in without suitable internet connectivity. Did you know that according to a U.S. Census report by Inequity, over 25% of Milwaukee residents, largely African Americans, say that they don't have internet at all? To add insult to injury, low-income areas in Milwaukee that do have internet and pay for access to it from AT&T are given considerably slower speed, but no decrease in price. Only 20% of these households are given the higher speed package that non-redline communities receive. One might wonder how these residents with slow internet are able to operate at all in this modern world. Almost everything these days requires some form of computer or internet connection. Some use their phones to try and get the job done, but without a smartphone with good reception, You can't do things like reaching your employer,
If you're late, need time off, have to take care of a kid, or going to a vacation, anything.
homework, food delivery services like Uber Eats, and meet other businesses and personal needs. How is one to perform necessary daily tasks when they are given a deal that is much worse than their neighbors from better off neighborhoods? And on top of that, paying the same price, usually over $60 a month, as their better off counterparts for the service?
To me, that's a harsh reality of discrimination in and of itself. Internet does not come cheap, especially if you're a part of a large family with kids that play video games daily, use the TV, use their phones. And for a company like Spectrum that has such a wide reach across the nation and even the world, you would not expect that from a modern company that has many, many, many black clients.
Yet another aspect of life affected by redlining that I'd like to discuss today is housing and the problem with modern suburbs. Nearly 40% of Milwaukee residents are black. That's 245,476 people, 91.4% of the black population. 224,284 live within the city. That's a difference of over 21,000 living on the border of the city. That is the lowest percentage in the suburbs of any metro area in the country. Compare this 91.4% of black people in Milwaukee to Detroit, which is over 77%, Cleveland, Ohio, which is over 50%, and New York, which is over 75%. According to the Metropolitan Milwaukee Fair Housing Council, although housing discrimination of any kind has been made illegal, there are still many roadblocks for black residents. According to the Milwaukee Fair Housing, the city was not capable of conducting proper investigations of accusations of racial discrimination. Moreover, the city ordinance protecting residents from discrimination is inconsistent with federal and state fair housing laws, with a vague ordinance and a poor application of protections when a person tries to cite discrimination using the ordinance. It's even harder to find a good home as a black person since the Institute for Research on Poverty, or IRP, states that within Milwaukee County, 30.3% of black residents with families live in poverty, compared to the much lower 10% of their white counterparts. By this point in the course, you are likely aware that Milwaukee is the most segregated metropolitan area in the entire nation. But did you know that this situation had a catalyst 20 years before you and I were born? We all need to be responsible voters to combat discriminatory housing ordinances, to get equal rights and equal access and pricing for internet users to everyone in the city. We all need to be responsible voters to combat discriminatory housing ordinances, to get equal access and pricing for internet users to everyone in the city, and to fight long-standing effects from a bygone era that should not continue to hurt the present.
We need to stand up and fight as a generation to not repeat what happened 20 years before we were born. We need to stand and create a world that is sufficient enough to house every future generation of any color. Not even in Milwaukee, but everywhere. This is definitely not an easy thing to do. But you can start by using information like this, educating yourself, and sharing it with your friends and family so everyone knows what's going on, not only in our city, but everywhere. Redlining stretches far beyond Milwaukee, and it's something that hurts families today.
You were listening to Manolo Delgado. Thanks for coming on.